And Dr. Bridgeforth, Pastor, thank you, Pastor Paul. It's incredibly significant that you chose to do this today, because, you know, obviously, especially for those of us who are first responders today, those of us who worked during that time 20 years ago, like everybody else, you know, certainly everyone remembers exactly what happened that day and in the weeks afterwards. And you know, it's incredible for me because this morning I went with our fire chief into Manhattan, and everyone knows you know how tragic and how much things changed and how much of an effect it had on all of us who are alive and lived through this. But it's incredible if we think of maybe just one or two of the stories of some of our first responders who were there. So this morning, Chief Jackson and I went over to the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. They call it something different now. And we commemorated a walk from a firefighter Stephen Siller, who had just gotten off duty from Ladder 10 that morning. And Ladder 10 is across the street from what was for World Trade Center. So literally right there. So he had gotten off his shift at 8 o'clock. He was on his way home, heard over the radio the plane hitting the tower, and tried to come back. But you know, the traffic was gridlocked and the tunnel wasn't moving, so he grabbed all of his gear out of his car because he kept his gear in his car. He didn't have space in the firehouse, and he ran with 60 pounds of firefighter gear through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel into Manhattan, and just like everyone else, almost everyone else from all tours who worked in that house, responded into the Trade Center. And they were among the 343 firefighters who never came home. And it includes, you know, 37 Port Authority police officers and 23 New York City police officers. And there's stories of them also. There's a member of the New York Police Department that was retiring that morning, signing his paperwork to retire, and heard what was happening, decided no, asked for his badge back, commandeered a cab, went to the Trade Center, and got there as they were giving out the last respirator, and he said, no, seniority counts, that goes to me, and took it from a less senior officer, went into the towers, and he wound up dying.
My Lord.
And there's a captain of the police academy for the Port Authority Police. She went inside, and there was hundreds of people trapped after that first tower collapsed, and she shot out a glass window so that literally hundreds of people could escape, and they lived. And she went upstairs to try and rescue more people, and she didn't survive either. So, I mean, these stories are incredible, and it's just what I think what makes what these folks do so different is that, you know, if that alarm went off today, again, at a building in New York, at a building in Newark, or any other type of emergency, these firefighters, these police officers, these men and women would do the same thing without thinking twice. And so, you know, just thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving honor to what they do day in and day out, literally putting their lives on the line. And it's incredibly significant that you chose this day to do it. And lastly, I just want to remember, because obviously the challenge of our time is living through this pandemic. And while there is so much uncertainty, and while so many people were, you know, folks lost their jobs, but other people stayed home, they were able to stay home, these officers, these firefighters didn't have that choice. And so 9 of our colleagues are not here today because they succumbed to that virus. So I just want to remember them here today. We have Special Police Officer Tolbert Furr, Intelligence Analyst Daniel Francis, Sergeant Michael Clegg, Police Officer Michael Connors, Detective Brian McAdams, Detective Irving Callender, Detective Marcus Thomas, Police Aide Richard McKnight. I believe I got all of them. Is that 9? Anyone's? Who?
Moya.
And Police Officer Hector Moya, of course. All 9 of those officers, you know, gave their lives because they worked for the city, because they worked in public safety, because they likely contracted this virus while they were working, and have since given their lives. And one of them, actually, the last one we buried, Police Aide McKnight, The week after we buried him, his wife also died of the coronavirus, leaving behind a child without parents. So I would just ask, in wrapping this up, if you could, one of the members of the clergy here could offer a prayer for the members, for all these lives that have been lost. Thank you. Thank you.